Hogan could hold his own in the ring, but how about the courtroom? The wrestler is in the midst of a $100 million legal battle with the website Gawker over a leaked sex tape. And now his former wife says he doesn't deserve a penny. Here's ABC's Lindsay Janis.
If you've ever had the feeling Hulk Hogan's wrestling matches weren't exactly on the up and up.
Look at this!
Here's one Hogan matchup where the outcome is, for once, completely up in the air.
You didn't ask them to see the sex tape they had, did you?
No, sir, I did not.
Today was day 5 of the sensational trial pitting the former WWE star against Gawker.
Heather wants to have sex with you. It started out like that.
Hogan, whose real name is Terry Bollea, is suing the gossip site for posting a portion of a 2007 tape of him having sex with Heather Clem, the then wife of his former best friend, radio shock jock Bubba the Love Sponge Clem.
And then Heather just kind of started walking to the bedroom, pulling my hand.
Hogan seeking $100 million for the alleged invasion of privacy, claiming he didn't know he was being filmed.
There's a tape of you, Heather.
First off, I'd never made a tape.
But Gawker arguing that he's a public figure, and as journalists, they enjoy First Amendment rights to cover private matters about public figures.
This case is really about a news organization's ability to join a national conversation on a topic that's in the news. In this particular case, Hulk Hogan spent years talking in graphic detail about his sex life.
Gawker not the only ones lacing into the ex-wrestler.
He has no regret. He has no shame in his game.
Hogan's ex-wife Linda telling Inside Edition just this week that she doesn't believe he deserves a dime in his lawsuit against Gawker.
I want the world to know how I feel about him. I don't know how he could do this to his family, to his peers, to the world.
Today, Hogan's lawyers arguing this isn't about Hogan's morals, but Gawker's, putting its very culture on trial. Reading emails between A.J. Delario, then editor-in-chief, and a young woman pleading to have Gawker take down a video showing her having sex.
In her initial email, she writes, "I am the girl in it, and it was stolen from me and put up without my permission."
He later writes to the young woman,
"It's not getting taken down. It's a dumb mistake you made. Happens to the best of us."
Ultimately, the tape was taken down.
The more evidence that they can present that Gawker leaders behaved badly or recklessly, the better chance they have of getting a big verdict from this jury.
The defense making the argument that Hogan's sex life is fair game because he's discussed it publicly before.
Dude, I got size 15. I wear a size 15 ring. My wedding ring. Figure it out. 2/3 size your feet and your hands.
Playing a radio show clip where Hogan discusses the size of his manhood with shock jock Bubba the Love Sponge.
So Hogan, you're claiming a baby have a 10-inch.
I'm not claiming those was facts, Jack.
But this morning in court, Hogan's team bringing out claims of their own.
28.5% of that change in value is attributable to the whole sex tape.
The internet expert testifying that Gawker made $15.4 million from posting the sex tape. Gawker disputes that.
Today's testimony is focusing on how much should this jury award if they believe that Gawker should be found liable. I don't believe for a second that Gawker made $15 million plus just on having this tape.
The man behind the post, that same editor-in-chief at the time, A.J. Delario, here in a recorded deposition, saying he received it from an anonymous source.
So I enjoyed watching the video because I found it very amusing.
Lawyers asking him, is there any celebrity sex tape he wouldn't consider newsworthy?
They were a child. Under what age? 4.
But Gawker calling the outrageous remark flip, saying it was made only after he'd already said he wouldn't post a tape of a child.
While he may have been flip, and he may have been sarcastic, and he may not have meant it at all, when you're in a deposition, your words matter, and your words can be used against you.
Lawyers also asking Gawker founder Nick Denton whether he thought posting the video would be distressing to Hogan.
No, I didn't. And why not? Because my job is to send that information, and that's our social function.
Browse through Gawker.com today, and on its front page, mostly political coverage. Noticeably missing are the more salacious stories the site was once famous for. Hogan's team put a journalism professor on the stand, Mike Foley from the University of Florida, who testified that Gawker is practicing unethical journalism. But lawyers for Gawker tried to body slam him.
You were a reporter for only 3 years. Not been a reporter since 1973, correct?
That's approximately correct.
And even seemed to get him to agree with some points of their argument.
Gossip columns, they too are protected under our First Amendment, even if you don't think they're doing good journalism, right?
Freedom of the press.
The beginnings of the sex tape ordeal started when Hogan was in the midst of shooting a reality show called Hogan Knows Best. He says he and his then-wife Linda drifted apart, but he had a friend who he says always had his back.
He was holding my father as my father passed away, so there was never any question of, who he was or what he meant to me.
His name's Bubba Clem, that shock jock in Florida. Hogan says his best friend proposed an unusual method to make him forget his troubles.
Heather wants to have sex with you, or Heather wants to see the size of your. It started out like that.
Heather was Clem's wife.
Bubba Clem asked you, and do you recall what your answer was?
I said I would.
Hogan says he initially laughed it off.
I knew they had an open marriage because he talked about it on the radio. But I thought with me, it was so many times that they talked about it, it kind of turned into a joke.
But at his lowest point, he says he called his friend Clem.
She basically said, I'm filing for divorce. All I did was call Bubba up, and I was just crying like a baby on the phone to him. I just broke down. When Bubba says, hey man, come over to the house, let's talk, I was just so desperate. I went over there.
Moments after Hogan arrived, he says Clem's wife grabbed his hand and led him up the stairs to the bedroom.
From the feeling I had, I said, Bubba, you're not filming this, are you? And he just slashed into me. What the hell's wrong with you? I'm your effing best friend. How dare you say that to me?
But 5 years later, a tape of that night is posted by Gawker. Hogan says he didn't even believe his friend Clem was in on this either until later that day. A bombshell.
When they confirmed that Bubba was on the tape and Bubba went up and turned the camera off and Bubba told Heather that this is for our retirement, Heather, I just started violently shaking.
He later settled a lawsuit with Clem, who apologized for stating that Hogan knew he was being taped. But Hogan has refused to settle this one, saying Gawker, by publishing the tape, violated his privacy.
They made a conscious decision to expose Terry Bollea naked and engaged in sex and having private conversations in a private bedroom.
I think it's a very hard argument to make to say, well, I'm entitled to my privacy when I decide to be Terry Bollea as opposed to Hulk Hogan.
But now his private life, for better or worse, back in the limelight as his legal team rests its case.
How do you feel mentally after this week?
Toughest workout I've ever had.
And it's not over yet. The battle continues next week as the defense presents their case. For Nightline, I'm Lindsay Janis in St. Petersburg, Florida.